So the Storm King's Wrath is one of the hardest hitting weapons in the entire game. If you've ever ran the Storm King fight, you've probably used the Wrath in the fight. If you've never ran the Storm King fight, you've probably been hoping to get the Storm King's Wrath. It is super good for single target damage. It annihilates the crystals in one shot. It is an excellent choice for mini bosses, and it is a fan favorite for every single reason. It is a well-deserved mythic weapon. 3 years ago, this weapon came out, and I made my best perks video on it, and I'm here today to update it because I have some new things to say. And let's be honest, when people see that it was 3 years ago, I get so many comments asking me if that video is still up to date that I'm just making a new one. So let's talk about it. Now, in my old best perks videos, I gave an intro and then I talked about the perks later on in the video. And today I'm going to do things a little bit differently because there are several different ways to perk this weapon. I know a lot of you probably just paused the video, took these and left, and honestly, you're good to go. Enjoy. But I want to say some things. So first and foremost, I want to recommend against triple damage. That's something I recommended in my first video, but I have some new thoughts to share with that because I have since tried triple damage and it's not that consistent. So here's the problem. Typically, you want to run crit rating double crit damage. That is a staple. It is well researched and there's a reason for that because it feels weird that 38% of the time is the only time you're doing the best damage. Like if you say Beast, aren't you just being kind of useless 62% of the time? And I'd say yes, you are sort of. You're still doing 280,000 and this is without a team. I know this gets up over 400k when my friends join, so you're gonna be good even when you don't crit. But here's the deal. Even with triple damage, you are still, if you're going up against a smasher or a mini boss, you're still going to be shooting a lot. So even with triple damage, yes, every single bullet will be doing 90% more damage, but it's not like you're suddenly going to be like 1 or 2 shotting a smasher. You're still going to need multiple shots to kill a smasher. And a lot of you math nerds are probably onto me here. If it takes at least 3 shots to kill a smasher, you probably would have crit by that point anyway. You see where I'm going with this? So in almost every instance, you're going to have to shoot multiple times. It's not like triple damage makes you suddenly one-shot the crystals. If I'm wrong about that, then comment down below. Maybe my editor can correct me, but I still think it's true that you're going to want to crit build in almost every instance. It's actually interesting because I recommended triple damage for consistency, but then I tried it myself and I was just disappointed. I felt kind of embarrassed. So I'm recommending against that. Now, for the perk loadouts that you do want to use, there are 3 main things I want to recommend, all right? First and foremost is what I've got here. That is crit rating, double crit damage, and damage to miss monsters and bosses. That's different from the fire rate build I showed in my video because this build is a lot more optimized for single targets. This is a lot better if your role in an MSK fight is against smashers. If your role is to just be taking out the end phase of the Storm King, which honestly, I recommend using the Discharger or the Deatomizer. Both of those weapons are way better for the end phase. I hope I just showed that clip of us killing the end phase MSK in 3 seconds. The Discharger is kind of insane. So if you're using the Wrath for the end phase, you might not be wanting to do that, but I understand that not everybody has every weapon, so damage to miss monsters bosses is great for that. Now, if you're using the Wrath in normal missions, this is excellent for your miss monsters, for your bosses. As the perk would suggest, you will do a lot more single target damage. This is actually the highest damage per second version of this weapon. Now, for fire rate, you can see I have multiple copies here. That is actually really good for crystals, because you don't need that extra damage against crystals. In fact, miss monsters bosses doesn't actually do more to the crystals as far as I'm aware. If it does, it's not significant. You actually want to shoot a lot faster because sometimes you're not going to crit. In fact, 62% of the time you're not going to crit. And using fire rate will make you overheat faster, but it'll smoothen out your damage a lot. You'll be able to get 42% more shots off. You'll be shooting a lot quicker. And if you can afford the energy cells, that faster consistency is a lot better in my opinion. I ran fire rate for the longest time. I don't know. It's up to you whether or not you want to run damage to miss monsters bosses or fire rate, but a point that I'm driving towards here is that I mentioned it earlier, the Storm King came out 3 years ago. There are a lot of you watching who probably have multiple copies of the Wrath. I've been recycling them for years. So my honest recommendation is to maybe run multiple copies of this weapon. You can see I have 3 of them. So what you might want is like a physical miss monsters and bosses version for the Storm King fight and the mini bosses, or a physical fire rate copy if you're running the Storm King in general use case, or you might want to keep an energy copy for regular missions. You'll note that this one is triple crit damage. Don't worry, we'll get to that, but energy is a lot better for normal missions. If you're running the Storm King fight, everything in there is physical. So in that instance, it's actually a lot better to run physical. You will be doing 24% more damage. But in a regular mission, you're going to be coming up against elemental smashers, elemental mini bosses, and in that case, you might actually want energy. However, you can't choose if your mini boss is going to be elemental or not. So I actually recommend leveling up multiple copies. That might be a bit expensive, expensive, but I'm gonna level with you. I'm one of those people who thinks that if you're running Storm King, you should be power level 121 at least. In my opinion, you probably have the resources to build multiple copies. I think that's a fair assumption. If you got carried, then I don't know, I'm sorry, farm more. I think multiple copies is really good if you're running this in normal missions because it's something you should be able to afford. And even if you've never ran the Storm King fight before, you get a Storm King mission every single Wednesday. So for those of you who don't know, when you run the Storm King fight the first time ever, you can get a new weapon on the next day. So say you do that on a Monday. Then you run the next time on a Tuesday, and then you get a second mythic weapon. And then Wednesday on Shop Reset is actually when it resets. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in America. I don't know other time zones, but that's when Shop resets on Wednesdays. So that is when you can actually get a third copy in like your first week of MSK. If you planned well, you can get a lot from that. So what I'm saying is every week after that, you get another mythic weapon. You can get multiple copies pretty soon. So I actually recommend running multiple copies just for every instance. You can have like a damaged Mist Monster boss as physical and energy depending on what the situation at hand requires. Now, I promised I would talk about this triple crit damage build. I do not recommend running this, but a while back, I made a triple crit damage Wrath video. I'll link it down below. Highly recommend checking it out. If you run Totally Rockin' Out with this weapon, you can get that crit chance up pretty high and make it kind of viable. I'm not going to recommend that for regular use. Nobody should be using the Wrath as their primary weapon. It is 20 energy cells per shot, and it gets up to 60 if you charge it. It is very expensive. I am no longer talking to day one players. If you're running this that way, you can have a lot of fun. Maybe you can have 2 copies on hand where you have 1 energy copy for the elemental smashers and then use a physical one for the physical smashers. Like I said, the physical copy will do a lot more damage, and running this with Totally Rocket Out, it's actually pretty fun. Fire rate is really great because you really want to take advantage of it. When you eat a wafer, you've only got 8 seconds of Totally Rocking Out, and it's decaying by the second. So to make the most use out of that increased crit chance, fire rate is a great way to take advantage of it. If you want to just do the most damage, then Mist Monster Boss is the way to go. Or I guess damage if you're not shooting Mist Monsters for some reason, but normal enemies are not going to survive a hit from the Wrath anyway. So Mist Monster Boss is the only conceivable way to go there. Triple crit damage can be kind of fun in that circumstance, even if it's not really a build I recommend. I think these 2 builds are really for serious use if you're trying to make the most out of your weapon, and then triple crit damage is if you're bored one night and you want to have a fun time. So I hope that helped. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is probably an overdue video, even though I still stand by my old video. I think it recommends good perks, and it's kind of the same conversation. But as a content creator, I know you guys kind of ignore videos that are 3 years old, and honestly, it was kind of fun to talk about the Wrath again. Who doesn't like to see a bunch of footage of the Wrath annihilating enemies? I think we all have fun with that. So if you want to subscribe for more, I recommend that. Twitch link down below. I record most of my videos on stream, so if you want to come hang out and talk, then you're welcome to join. I'll see you guys later, and thanks for watching. And then